Welcome back, friends. And before we get started, I have some coaching announcements. Now, we are going to be launching a 10-week podcast contest. That means that we're going to be giving out prizes every Friday for those who are putting in reviews and 5 stars and sharing. Now, make sure that you screenshot and you share with me on social media. Next thing, if you're local to Ottawa Hull, I have bike maintenance clinics that you're going to want to check out, learn how to patch a tire, change a flat, and then I have learn to group ride clinics. So if you're new to cycling and you're worried about how to bike with others and bike safely, this is a clinic for you. And then I have my online cycling skills program. The first one is a 4-hour cycling skills intensive. The next one is 4 weeks where you work one-on-one with me. The third one is a 4-video module download that you can work at your own pace. You can get all the details on my website, sylvie.ca. Now, the last part is the fitness component. It's hard to be a well-rounded cyclist without weight training and strength training. So I have launched a Cycle Fitness on-demand membership, and this is for anyone, but specifically, I'm targeting those cyclists who want to be well-rounded and strong and improve their cycling and also into a life of longevity. Go to cyclefitness.online and take advantage of the free 7-day trial. Try it out, check out the workouts, see what you think, enjoy, and thanks for listening. All right, everyone, welcome. I am super excited to bring my host, Graig de Gier, to the Secrets of the Saddle podcast. And my name is Sylvie, your host. And so we have Graig. I just met him in my coaching course that we just completed last week, 3 weeks, 18 hours of coaching. Everything about coaching. And I'm glad I took it. And I'm sure Graig is too. Good refresher. But it also gave me access to more coaches and more cycling, cycling coaches from around straight across Canada and actually into Europe that I'm really excited to bring to you on this podcast. Now, Graig is the CEO of Prairie Cycling Development in Saskatchewan. He's going to break that down because this has a huge title that encompasses mountain biking, road, and track, and I'm sure other things as well. So welcome, Graig. I'm super excited to have you here, and we're going to get started with a couple questions and then into the big questions. So first, where do you live right now?
I live in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan right now.
Well, I've just found out that, yeah. Okay, now, how many years have you been in cycling yourself, like as started or as a coach?
So I've been, I guess, affiliated with cycling for the better part of 22 years now, at various levels, some years much more heavily than others, but yeah, it feels like it's a long time when you say it that way.
I know it, doesn't it? It's like, oh my God, they just start adding up. Now, what is your current position in cycling, or I guess within your business in Saskatoon?
Yeah, so I have my company, Prairie Cycling Development, is my main platform for doing any kind of programs affiliated with developing the sport. And typically, I look at it from the perspective of it's a 3-pillar platform with the sport on top of it. And the 3 pillars that I try to focus on are facilities, coaching, and events there. And my time is split mostly between a balance of those, or any programs try to fit into one or more of those pillars.
Perfect. Now, I'm going to come back to that question because I'm really interested in it. So here's the big starter. How did you get into cycling yourself? How did you get started? And, you know, foreseeing and then into building this business?
Wow, how did I get started into cycling? That goes back a long ways. Honestly, it was 1 year around my birthday. I saved up my birthday money and got myself a better bike. It had a front suspension fork on it, so it was a big deal at the time. And then just did a lot of biking throughout that summer. And at some point, someone showed me a pamphlet for a race at one of my local bike shops, and turned out I had missed that race, but then went and found more races potentially going on, and went out to one of them, enjoyed it, kept going, and I guess that's it. Kept going after that.
How long ago was that?
That was 1998.
98. Okay, well, I know how old I was in 98. So is it like 25 years ago? 20 years ago?
Well, that's about the 22 years ago. That's when I
okay.
consider to be my start there. So,
Cool.
yeah, I don't feel like I should be old enough to say that I started 22 years ago at this, but.
So how did it progress? Like, you started the racing, and take us into the development of and getting into like the coaching and your business.
Yeah, so obviously the first couple of years, especially like for me at the time, I was in my early to mid teens when I started, but Canada Games became quite a goal out of that. So wanting to attend Canada Games, I grew up and I was living in Nova Scotia at the time, and yeah, there was a Canada Games coming up in 2001, and through just the general progress of that, got into road biking with it, and ended up making the Canada Games team for the province in 2001 as primarily a road cyclist at the time too. So started off mountain biking, but then migrated to road, and through that process discovered that I was much better at road racing than I was at mountain biking. So as much as I enjoy mountain biking, I realized as a racer, I was just better on the road. So, and then that's where my racing career, we'll call it, from about 2001 to early 2007, it focused mostly on the road, migrated to track through that as well. And in hindsight, should have done more track racing as well through that time, but hindsight's 2020. So, and then post 2007, kind of dabbled in a few things. I helped at the time as an organizer for the 2007 track nationals, which were held in DF New Brunswick there under the Atlantic Cycling Center and under Luke Arsenault. And then had a lot of quiet time from, call it around 2008 or so through to around 2016, 2017. So almost a decade of not heavily involved. But then that's around when we moved back to Saskatchewan, found myself in a moved to Saskatchewan, not back to Saskatchewan. But I found myself in a situation where I could look at trying to invest in something that I really liked or really believed in, was more of like a labor of love as opposed to just a job, and decided to go down this route with it. So that's when I decided, okay, time to really get my coaching courses upgraded to where they should be. Started to look into different programs that have run in other places, and started to think about how can you get more people into this sport and into the organized sport element of cycling. And then working to progress that is where we get to today.
I love it. So, all right. So there is a track in the Maritimes?
There used to be a track in DFW
Okay.
Brunswick. It was there from 2001 until 2018, I think, is when it had to come out. It just the structure of it was starting to reach the end of its useful life. So.
And so the track in Saskatoon, there's a track there, or do you go
No, there isn't.
You go to Edmonton?
Edmonton would be the closest track. I haven't. The only track I've ridden in recent history is actually I was in London, Ontario for a coaching course a couple years ago and got to ride Forest City there. And given that I think that was the first time I was on a track in about 10 years as well. And I'll completely pun intended, there's a steep learning curve at that track.
Yeah, I know. I've been on that multiple times, and only because we go there, well, we used to at least once a winter just to change things up, but that track is so small.
Yeah.
Did you find?
It's so I had ridden many other tracks, including, well, I guess the next steepest track in Canada would be Burnaby. And I had, back in the day, I had spent a lot of time riding Burnaby at different times. So it was really just the not sure how confident I should still be with it, but at least like looking at the banks and stuff, it didn't bother me too much. And once I got riding on it, it was actually pretty good. It all came back quick. So
yeah, track is definitely something you have to warm up to.
Yeah.
I
would love someday to bring a track closer to Saskatoon as well. If nothing else, from the selfish reason that I still own a track bike, and I'd like to be able to justify why I've moved it across the country or around the country a couple times with me.
Yeah, well, you know what? I mean, there's discussion that, just like skating rinks, there should be a track like in every major center. Just for that purpose, right? Like, I want to
say a few years ago, Cycling Canada had a strategy around, or started to develop a strategy around how to do that. For some reason, 2012 to 2014 is sticking out in my mind, but I'm not sure if that's still, if they're still active with that or not, or what it would take to get that reactivated. But
I can't imagine it'd cost any more than putting up a skating rink, like a skating arena, with multiple other things to do in it.
I think it's significantly less. Less. So the building that you need, like if you're talking about an outdoor track, it would be significantly less than an indoor skating rink. For an indoor track, the majority of the cost is affiliated with the building that it's inside. The tracks themselves, relatively speaking, aren't that expensive, but the building is. And you do need a much larger building to hold a proper sized velodrome than what a hockey rink will do. So that's why Forest City is the size that it is. I think it's 138 meters. And that's because that's what fits inside of a standard hockey rink.
But, if you had a bunch of those around, and then you had like a major one, like, Milton, and we got Bromont, and I guess Burnaby indoor, I guess Burnaby and Edmonton has an outdoor one. And then you just travel for the bigger
Calgary
events.
has an outdoor.
Oh, do that? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the next question is, and I know I'd like you to talk a little bit about your coaching experience, and what's your greatest coaching moment? Because I know you've talked about, and I want you to bring this back, is working with juniors. I know that's always an experience for everybody, but but what was your greatest moment going into that?
Yeah, so I think that Definitely. So working with some of the juniors, I think I mentioned earlier already that a couple of years ago I went as an assistant to Tour de la BTV, and we had a couple of riders there, one of whom was also a Saskatoon boy, and I had worked with him for only about 4 weeks before he even went to that race. But in that time, he was a great kid to work with. He was a sponge. And we went over training stuff. We did motor pacing work. We went over technical abilities, where to ride on the road, what to look for, what to feel for. We practiced doing wheel changes in case he got a flat, which he did get a flat during Abitibi, and he followed the procedure to a T. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, wow.
And he got back into the pack and everything exactly how it's supposed to work. And it was amazing just to see that, okay, like, hey, there's an 18-year-old that can listen and can learn. And
that is a great coaching moment.
Yes. But to cap it all off, that kid at the end of Abitibi in the last stage, when he in stage 1, he was fighting to stay in the race because he was involved in a crash early in the race. And that was a day that they averaged almost 48 kilometers an hour. So once you were off the back and in the caravan, you could not get back. So he was in a small group and time trialed 100 kilometers to make it just within the time cut on day 1. On the final day, he got himself in a position at the final sprint and wound up 10th in the final sprint. So to go from fighting for your life on day 1 to getting 10th at the end of the biggest race that he might do in his career, that was quite amazing to see. So
that is a good coaching moment. Now, so do we have a worst coaching moment? Even though I gave you a couple minutes to think about that, you gotta have one.
Yeah, I mean, like there's always things that, well, here's a good one. This was back in my riding days too, but at a training camp where we were bringing in a lot of younger riders, and the older riders there, which I was part of, were there to sort of like coach along in the pack and everything. And this was one. This should get a good laugh out of everyone. But we rolled up to a red light, and we're stopped at the red light, and then all of a sudden I do something while I'm on my bike, and in the middle of this group of young riders with one of our managers behind us, I tip over right at the light, clipped in on one side and everything. And that was there was some good embarrassment there. I gave our manager in the car a really good laugh about that one, and I'm sure that he was wishing that he could have gotten that on video. No, I didn't take anyone else down. I must have been on the outside, but yeah, just.
I think everybody who's ever biked has one of those moments, because I know I do, and it was at a stop sign. It always is. You don't get clipped out right, or you clip out on the wrong side, and you just completely fall over, and then you get up and you like look around and then pedal a little away. It's like, did that even happen?
I'll usually tell people that when you start riding clipped in, count on it happening about every 2 to 4 years once you get used to your clipless pedals there. Every 2 to 4 years, it's going to happen. So
yeah, it doesn't, nobody gets past that. That's for sure.
No.
Now, since you're doing, so let's go back to your Prairie Cycling Development company or business. Now, what are you kind of doing in there? Because I know that, like, I mean, I want you to name off all the associations that you're affiliated with or working with, but what's one of your main projects that's happening right now?
Yeah, so with Prairie Cycling Development, as I mentioned before, I look at it from the perspective of my 3 pillars. So events, coaching, and facilities. when I first started everything up, I would have guessed that coaching and events were going to be the first two to sort of take off or have opportunities with. And then facilities would lag probably 5 years behind or so. In reality, the events have started up and progressed exactly how I expected. Coaching hasn't so much, but facilities also took off. So I'm involved with the development of a site called River Ridge Trails, which is about half an hour outside of Saskatoon in a small town or near a small town called Langham. And we're developing a multi-use trail park there to include mountain biking as one of the primary activities with it. And the intent with that is to be able to also host regional, provincial, and hopefully even national type Canada Cup level races at this event, at this facility site. And we got started on it in September. There, we got our first mountain bike loop done, it's about a 1.8 kilometer loop that we got done in about 6 weeks there. And it still needs some more work on that loop too. Plus we want to develop many more trails in the park, but it was a great way to get started with it there. And then of course, even just in the park space, now we're working on getting winter sport integrated. So some fat biking involved, hopefully, along with snowshoeing and cross-country skiing. And so I find myself doing work for other sports as well as part of this too. So.
Well, it sounds like you're doing your job well and people want you or are bringing you in as the expert to set this up, because I mean, geez, if it's not needed, I mean, it's needed now more than ever. Like I don't,
it is,
you know, with COVID, it's, you know, we need the you know, the places to go outside, whether you like winter or not. Like people are just like looking for something to do, right? And that's awesome, because I don't know about fat biking there, but fat biking is pretty big here, you know, and then there's the snowshoeing and cross country skiing.
It's huge here. We have a dedicated fat bike club.
Oh,
that's all they do.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we have an official club here in Ottawa, but there's pages and there's lots of groups. So I'm not sure if there's like an official club, like, but I'm sure it's not far away. But gravel seems to be one of the things that's really, is that taken off in your area too?
It has, and it's gravel biking, or the idea of gravel biking is almost golden for Saskatchewan, because we have for road racing, it's actually hard to find loops of the right size that are paved. To the point that some road races even have to do like turnarounds on them and U-turns on them because we just don't have sort of the layout of roads. So gravel biking and this concept of, gravel roads are acceptable for a discipline of cycling is actually a very good opportunity out here.
Did you find your gravel riders are heading into like farmers' fields and down dirt roads on like big farms? Anything like that?
So the layout of the roads is actually such that like the rural municipalities around here, they have a grid road network and they have easements for the grid roads. And there's plenty of them that are summer only roads anyway. So honestly, the road doesn't look much more like a path that a farmer drove his or her tractor down. But that is technically an easement for a road. So
oh my gosh, I got some really bad visuals.
I certainly wouldn't take my wife's Jetta down that road. Our Subaru Outback or the truck might be iffy at best too. So
yeah, no, I've got visuals myself on what they look like. Well, that's cool because I know like around here it's just huge, and you try and like you try and stay true to like road and everything, but you know you just feel the pull because everybody's like got multiple bikes, and you know they're always doing one of everything. You're like, oh my gosh. All right.
But it's
So,
interesting, if you look at the history of road bike, it's not like road biking is over 100 years old.
yeah.
And they didn't have, not every road was paved back then. I mean, that's
Oh, I
where
know.
Paris-Roubaix comes from, that it's the paving stones. But even outside the paving stones, like they used to race over a lot of dirt roads. So in my opinion, a well-maintained gravel road should be well acceptable to a road biking event.
Oh, I
I
know.
love it that the Tour de France goes over dirt roads in places now,
Oh,
and I think that needs to happen more. I think that we need to open up our possibilities with the sport to include more terrain like that. So,
you
and this is coming from someone who spent a lot of time road racing on pavement. And yeah, I'm sure back in the day I complained about rough pavement in
oh,
places
no
too.
way.
So,
It's like, it's like,
yeah,
no, but you know, and I agree with you. Like you could probably ride most of these gravel, hard pack gravel with a road bike. Like you don't need a
yep.
gravel bike. It's just, you know, it's one of those things like you don't need it, but maybe you know, it's just
So a
another,
balance between need and want.
yeah, I
N
know.
plus one.
Yeah. That's why it's then you're like, do I need another bike hanging in the garage? So then this is kind
N
of
plus
goes,
one.
huh? Well,
N
yeah,
plus
right.
one.
You're like, then you have to ask your wife or your partner, and do I have a place big enough? And I know I started liquidating some of my bikes as my husband's like, you don't have rooms and you haven't used that in like 5 years. And, you know, so the first thing to go was my mountain bike. But,
Yeah.
oh, well.
You gotta figure out what works for it.
I
It's
know, I
gonna work
know.
different for everyone. So yeah.
Well, you take that money and roll it into another one. It's newer.
Exactly.
Um,
Reinvestment
yeah,
in
yeah, that's
depreciating
right. I'll
assets.
just keep it in the Gier pool, the pool of money.
Yeah.
So with life balance, like I know that you have, you know, you have kids, and how are they with like, are they into what you're doing? Like, how do you pull the family into that?
Yeah, so balance is definitely tricky. Like there's a lot of pulls at times. My wife has a very demanding career as well, and I'm very thankful for that because it's a big part of what allows me to try and do what I'm doing here. And then and then I have a 5-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. So the almost
Okay.
2-year-old isn't quite there yet. She kind of just gets dragged behind in most things. We do have one of the Thule chariots, so we can kind of put her in and
Yeah.
then attach to a bike, put the push bar behind it for running, or put the skis on it for skiing. We have a bunch of the different attachments and accessories to be able to do stuff with that. But my son Luke, he is very much into biking. He really enjoys the short track series that I run, so the youth program, or the youth and kids programs. I guess that starts before we call youth. But then also like other times, so we'll take him out to some of the trails. 2 years ago now, we went to a race course in another part of Saskatchewan, and he rode around half of this race course that was being used for Western Canada Games on his Strider bike. So there were some other people running around or riding around there pre-riding the course that were like, you got to keep him in cycling, and like, yeah, there's some influence there. But yeah, he's quite into the sports there and into riding his bike and that, and I think that will stay. My daughter, she'll probably start in next year a little bit there. We found even with my son that before age 2, they can kind of hold the bike in that, and we've had her on the Strider bike doing that already too. But they just kind of stand there with their hands on the handlebars. So,
like, I think it's like important, building out those leg muscles slowly. Because you imagine,
yeah.
I always thinking like when we go out and do something for a first time, like how much pain there is associated to it. You got to think that kids must go through that too.
Well, but it's different. It's a bit different. So like even just in the biological development, I mean, they have this energy. They can just go, and then when they crash, but they don't have this like slow deterioration of their energy the way that we do now. They'll just keep going and going and going and going and going, and then all of a sudden they stop, they lay down, and they go to sleep. So.
That sounds like my son. He's like, can I go run it? We have this kind of loop. It's like a walking loop. He's like, can I go run it and go to the mailbox? I'm like, sure. I've been tracked it. I think it's like 1.5 K, but I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Don't let the door hit you.
That's right. Whatever, just let me know. Yeah. And don't lose the key on the way or my mail. But I love it.
I'm sure he won't lose the bills. He'll only lose anything that you might actually want to see.
Yeah, that's right. Like, yeah, let those fly. Okay, so now I'm gonna ask, like, so you kind of do a lot of everything. So you're into trail development. Now. You're into junior program. What else do you do? Okay, you got your umbrella, you got facilities. Yeah. So, and what are all the organizations in Saskatchewan that you're affiliated with? You have to share. We're going to provide links to all of them too, so you can go find Graig.
So I serve on a couple of committees with the Saskatoon Cycling Association, or the Saskatchewan Cycling Association. Okay. Sorry, our provincial governing body. So I'm on the development committee and I'm on the high performance committee with that organization there. And really with both of those, they do kind of match a little bit because from a provincial strategy perspective, a lot of programs. So you have and we discussed this in our coaching course too, Sylvie, where a lot of programs get developed based off of like, what's your goal? What's your goal at the very top? What do you want to develop? And then from there, what your end goal is, you want to create your steps back down to all the way from how does someone get into cycling and then progress up to this top tier. So it's nice to be able to kind of see this from the full perspective there and to be able to provide some input with that. The funny part is in each group, sometimes there's discussions of, oh yeah, I think this needs to be shifted back to the development committee, or this needs to be shifted to the high performance committee, and completely realizing that to a certain extent, I'm re-volunteering myself with that kind of recommendation. But nevertheless, starting to get that separation and get that framework completed for how to how to create this set of steps for the sport, I think is very important. Mm-hmm. And then more locally in Saskatoon, I serve on a couple of different boards, mostly on the trail advocacy side. So on the facility side, our Saskatoon Trail Alliance here in Saskatoon, which is working on promoting and getting mountain bike trails recognized right here in the city. And then, of course, I'm very strongly affiliated with River Ridge Trails in Langham there.
So do you have, here's an extra question. Do you have programs? You just mentioned programs. So do you have programs going through high schools, or how do you get people on the trails, like new kids or new adults?
So the interesting part with the trails here in Saskatoon is they've been known about for a very long time. They're all legacy trails that have existed probably at least 10 to 20 years. So wow. People know about them. They're just not sanctioned. They're not reliably maintained, and they're not used by any organized sport organization. So one of the things I find amazing with cycling, most sports have a recreational activity component to them, and they have an organized sport component to them. Cycling has a third, which is transportation too. So between transportation and the recreational activity, cycling, I think, is very strong in Saskatoon. There's a good group of commuting cyclists. There's lots of people that are out riding on, whether it's the bike paths or some of the single track trails and that throughout the city. It's really in that organized sport side of things that we need to figure out how to bridge people from that rec activity to the organized sport. And the trails in Saskatoon, especially, they're not aligned and set up in a way that you're going to be hosting major events or anything significant from an event perspective without a material amount of investment into realignments and that. But they're still usable from a recreation into a coaching perspective, and then potentially bring people to other facilities for the actual events. So.
Well, yeah, I can imagine they must be pretty spread out. Now,
yeah.
If I was in Saskatoon, which is where you are, and I'm looking to get started in the spring, where or anytime, where would I start? Like, because there's a lot of organizations, like if you were to give someone advice, where would I start? Like, like joining someone, like joining an organization.
So like with a lot of areas for cycling, your local bike shop can certainly be a good hub for information on where to start. From there, you can find different clubs. We have mostly a pretty full spectrum of different clubs in town here that service different demographics and different disciplines of the sport there. So it really depends on what your age is, what you're looking for, what kind of discipline and that. So, and then from there, if you want to progress up through, we have some programs at the provincial level for people who want to progress up through the high performance racing and that. But we certainly do have some gaps in there, and some of those jumps are the issue as it currently stands. So,
yeah. So there are like you're saying, there's a lot of recreational groups and clubs, and then you got the high performance. And I think that's kind of, the issue everywhere, right? You're kind of missing that mid-level range, say like for the younger, the juniors, like teenagers, right? Is that the gap you're talking about? Like that kind of?
That can certainly be a gap, but the gap is almost even, I think teenagers are the ones that get caught out the most by it. But even for anyone else, we start off, our clubs will do some general like group riding and that. But then for your step into racing, it's all under a provincial series for the most part.
Okay.
And psychologically, to tell someone who's maybe joined a bike club for the first time this past year that, hey, why don't you come out and try a Saskatchewan Cup cycling race? Well, that's a psychological barrier to entry to think, oh, my first race, I'm going to go out and race at the provincial level.
I can see that.
Even though there's novice categories and sport categories in that, I don't think people hear that. I
wouldn't hear that either.
Yeah. So that there's So that's where, on the event side of things, and that's where the short track series that I run comes in, is that it's really trying to get this, okay, here's our local event. Here's what we would consider our rec league or our house league type of event, that it's easy to access, it's regular on a weekly basis, and it's pretty open. You don't have to be worried about some almost pro level racer coming and running you over from the back or something. It's how to get people out. And then from there, the next step that I don't know exactly how to develop it or exactly what it looks like yet, but I know that it needs to happen, is we got to figure out this tier 2 or maybe even a tier 3 level race, and then a tier 2 before then you get to your provincial level, which should be considered a tier 1, and allow that progression and those steps for people. And with mountain biking, it's a little bit easier to figure out what that, what those initial steps look like. It's a bit more difficult at times for road, but all of the disciplines to a certain extent need to follow that same track there. And if you look at sports like soccer or hockey, that is the track that they've developed, whether consciously or unconsciously, but that's the track that they have. And I think that participants are able to easily see and wrap their head around, here's how I start in the sport and here's how I progress as far as I care to progress through it.
Right. That is really a good point. And I'm just trying to think of Ottawa, because we've just, there's just very few events, whether it's regional, very few, I would say, if you want to call it races. There's lots of events like Grand Fondos and things like that, because I find that almost that competitiveness is taken a step back, and nobody wants to race, but they will go out and be competitive at a Grand Fondo. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of taken they don't feel it.
Race.
Yeah, and the competitiveness.
The word race is a barrier to entry.
Yeah, and but
I
a lot of people
compare it to a marathon.
Yeah, because a lot of people I don't want to be competitive.
Will go to a marathon.
Yeah. They don't want to be competitive, but boy, will they go out there and hammer it out to the bitter end, and really care about what your time was and make sure the distance perfect. You know what I mean? And I just find that I'm like, I don't know. And like you said, it's like that psychological thing, where they don't the word race has so many things attached to it that they don't want to be a part of. The training for it, it's just and I could see that, because a lot of people step back, but there are a lot of people who are competitive in events, a lot.
The Whistler Grand Fondo, I found, used to be the best example of the psychological difference between a Grand Fondo and a race there, because thousands go out to that. And it's like, oh, but it's not a race. At one point, at least, I don't know if this is still current or not, but at one point there was a $10,000 prize in Whistler for the first person that made it to Whistler, but it's not a race.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. It's not a race.
Yeah. So I was tricking everybody to attend an event, but give out big prize money for the top 5 or whatever. And
so we do got to psychologically get this changed in cycling, where it can be a race against yourself. Same as what a marathon is, same as a 10K on the running side, same as a triathlon. It's funny, people don't view a triathlon as a race because it's a triathlon. But if you say a road race, even though it's just one element of what a triathlon is, it's like, oh no, I don't race. So we got to figure out a way to change this psychology around the organized sports side of it.
I have to think about this good and hard. A little brainstorming session across Canada again.
Yeah.
I like, yeah, it was good bringing in all the coaches. And I attended a meeting the other day with race officials or commissionaires across Canada. And they were talking about, you know, it's the first time this has ever happened, which is bizarre to me. Like, I mean, if you want to make changes, this is where you start, like from, you know, race organizers, race officials, you know, like,
Yep.
and it's funny how a pandemic has kind of brought us together, right? Like, how can we be better? What can we do? You know, Quebec was able to get I wouldn't say, like, you know, events from July on organized, COVID friendly, and so everybody's kind of going to be looking at, you know, what they do, the policy, like everything, because it really did change the dynamic, I guess, of how you set up an event or a race. And but it was really interesting, and so there's hope, lots of hope for for next summer, even whatever happens from now till then. So,
and we'll see procedures and protocols that were brainstormed this year stick around into the long term as well. It's sort of, I think it's more just the pace of change that COVID has driven, because things progress over time as it is. A mountain bike race course from '98 would not even pass as anywhere close to an acceptable race course in 2019 or 2020. So things progress as it is anyway. It's just the rate of change that has been affected here. And what's the saying? Necessity is the mother of all invention. So,
yeah. Well, I'm kind of glad, you know, because this has put a fire under a lot of people's butts to make change quickly. I mean, not just in sport, but in a lot of different things. And I'm kind of excited about it, knowing that, you know, we're really trying to move forward to make things happen. And, you know, we have to, let's just say. So,
and cycling has been handed a gift with this, in that just generally our culture decided this year to demand cycling. By May, if you were in the market for a bike under $1,000, good luck. Even inventory was lean underneath that $2,000 mark. So now the challenge from challenge to sport organizations is there's all this equipment, all these people out there doing this activity, likely at the recreational level or recreational activity level. So now how do we bridge them into the organized sport and maintain that going forward? So.
Totally. I'm totally with you. Like, Ottawa just exploded, and, you know, because I'm in, you know, I have a women's cycling club. It's just like, how do you get all the new cyclists into clubs? And then, like you say, slowly migrate them towards events, because a lot of these people come from, you know, competitive events that maybe weren't able to run, or they're just like so brand new to cycling that, you know, you can kind of almost mold them.
Yep. And I think the focus is create an inclusive environment. And too often, and I've seen it myself, there's certain clubs or certain events, any elite or open men's field in any province is probably the worst example of it, where if you're not one of them, if you haven't been racing for 10 years already, then they're really critical and really hard on anyone to accept anyone new. And I understand why, because there's an element of danger, riding on the road, riding in a tight pack, but we have to figure out how to be inclusive and how to get these new riders in, make them feel welcome, make them feel like they belong. So.
Well, and I also feel that, you know, giving them the tools to get them up to par, like the clinics, like setting them up, setting up the clinics, get them through. And so that everybody's kind of like on the same page, like, learn to group ride clinics, or learn to ride, or learn to race, or whatever, is kind of like an essential thing to do in order to join a club or ride with a club. That's certainly how we've set it up, so that we know that everybody is at least knows the terminology and kind of knows what to do if they were able to facilitate it. Because, like, not everybody's going to draft behind each other right away. That's kind of like, you have to build up the comfort to that, but at least they know what that means. And it makes safety so much easier, like in the long run. So, but, so do you have any other, like, where can we find you? And is there anything coming up in the new year that you can share with us before we end the call?
Yeah, social media is the best place to sort of find me and find information there. I need to get my website revamped over this winter there, so got to come up with a plan on how to do that. Web development is not one of my strong suits.
I might have a plan for you.
Oh, okay.
Referral.
Okay.
I'm in the same boat, actually.
Yeah. But social media, I have figured out how to update that on a regular basis there. Obviously, over the winter, a little less active on social media and whatnot. But through the summertime, definitely more active with what's going on. Into next year, we'll certainly be booking in another short track series for people here in Saskatoon. We don't know what that's going to look like just yet because of COVID restrictions and that. But definitely going to be looking at that, and based off of whatever restrictions are in place, we'll probably look at doing some other really focused on regional events for now in this area to try to get those new riders out. And especially given that we're limited on what we can do for provincial level events. And I think that's going to extend into at least the first half of next season. So the focus being on regional events, I think, supports a whole bunch of initiatives with this. And then continued development of the facility at River Ridge Trails. That's going to be the single biggest project through next year, and hopefully the plan out there. We have a great group overseeing it, and the plan out there is to really create a high quality riding facility out there that can help to develop the sport and really create some excitement about the sport in the area. So
that's mountain biking, right?
Yeah, that's primarily mountain biking. We will have some cyclocross there. We've already held a cyclocross race out there too.
We didn't mention cyclocross.
No, that's right. We forgot about that.
Yeah, gravel, cyclocross. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, cyclocross is another huge cycling sport.
Yeah, and we have a very good community for cyclocross here in Saskatoon too. So,
I know that is a fun sport for all family members, younger, youngest. Like, I don't know. I guess when you start 6, they can start at 6. What's your youngest little racer? 8?
So for cyclocross, they don't really start cyclocross around here until 10, 12 years old. But my short track program there, that one is actually designed even better for the younger rider there, because below 10, we put them on a shorter course that is easier in that, but we get the atmosphere. And that one, I'll accept riders all the way down to 3 years old.
Oh, super cool. Oh, so you have a good progression for kids. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And especially in the same location. So,
and with that one, it was interesting. Last year we had a kind of a theory I had got confirmed, but there was a kid who the parents signed the kid up for short track, and they had been trying for 2 years to get this kid to transition from a tricycle onto a strider bike. And the kid just would not get on the strider bike, didn't want it, not interested. They brought him out to the first one that they could make it to. He's sitting there on the tricycle as we go through the little, like, here's what we're doing now. And then, all right, everyone go. Everyone takes off on their bikes, starts riding these obstacles through the little skills course or skills area that I had set up. This kid looks around, looks at his parents and says, get me the strider bike. And by 2 weeks later, he's going up to the top of this little berm in the park, and he's pointing downhill. He's lifting his feet up and coasting the whole way down this berm, like half out of control. But nevertheless, still like progressed from 0 to I got the strider bike in under 2 weeks.
All you have to do is look around. You put him with a bunch of other kids. It's like, I want what they have. Give it to me. It's like, what have you been doing all this time?
Works.
Oh, it totally works. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I can't wait till I put my son back in mountain bike camp next summer, because he was just like, he went there, he rented a good bike, and then he comes back to the house and I got the crappy bike, right? He's like, this isn't good. I was just like, oh my God. Okay. Yeah. So I need to pick it up, get something decent, because he's just like, I'm like, okay, I got it. But the thing is that, you know, you can see the potential there. And I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I've loved chatting. This has been amazing. I'm so excited to hear that there's like all this potential out in Saskatoon, or Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
And so if anybody's out there, reach out to Graig. All his information is going to be in the description, where you can find him, the organizations you can access. And please, if you have questions, fire them off to him. You can reach out to me and I can direct you to him. This has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time. And with that, we'll be probably checking in 2 years to see what's going on. I like this 2-year check-in.
There we go.
You know, lots of things can happen across the prairies between now and then. And you're definitely going to want to know about it. So don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, like and share, and provide comments and feedback. And we'll see you again. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks, Sylvie.
Hey gang, well, thank you so much again for joining me on Secrets from the Saddle podcast with our amazing interviewees. And so before you leave, I have something super amazing to share with you. My cycling courses. Now, I know that everybody's sitting on a trainer somewhere and they're training inside, or maybe you have a special program and you're looking to get better. Now, I know that, you know, if you were thinking about some of the things that you're doing in the summer, like how do I get faster? How do I get stronger? How do I climb hills like my buddies? The things that you're missing are the skills and technique, because how you climbed outside or rode outside is how you're going to ride inside, is how you're going to ride next spring. So what I have is a 12-week road cycling skills and technique course. And that is going to cover all the fundamentals that you need to improve and give you the skills to make you a proficient and efficient hill climber, whether you do time trials or triathlons. It's going to give you the skills you need to get faster, stronger, and more efficient. And we focus a lot on pedal stroke efficiency, because that is the basis of everything. So make sure you have the basic skills for cycling, and check out my program. So it's 12-week road cycling. I'll leave the links below. And also I have a 4-hour get the skills intensive. So you don't have to spend 16